With 2019 coming to a close, I figured I would review another anime that has recently finished. And since I already did one on Demon Slayer, it's about time I did a review of Season 1 of Dr. Stone. So let's get started. Dr. Stone is, I have to say, a really good anime for this season. In fact, it's one of the best anime I've seen this year. I'm not just going to talk about the animation, but I'm going to talk about the plot and the characters. First of all, let me just get straight into the plot of the series, the main story. All of a sudden, this big green light casts itself over the world, turning all living human beings and some birds into statues. After a few thousand years have passed, a boy named Senku, who is obviously our protagonist, I mean, look at that hair, he ends up breaking free and appears to be the only one that has ever broken free of the stone. He starts to experiment and try to find a way to break people out of the stone. After some experimenting in a sense, he finds the catalyst for what helps to break people out of the stone and essentially uses it to break his friend Taiju, the lovable idiot, out of the stone. We spend the entire first episode focusing around Senku and Taiju, trying to gather materials and everything they need to try and come up with a good way of breaking people out of the stone, to try and revive people. Hence, they call their new invention the revival fluid. The first episode was a kind of a montage of them getting what they need, doing what they would think they would need to do, and I believe it was almost a year in total, and they finally managed to do it. One of the first people they revive is actually a guy named Tsukasa, who is a literal man strong enough to kill a lion with his bare hands. Now, originally you'd think this guy is great. With him on Senku's side, they could survive and get whatever they need so they can help rebuild society.
Bitch, you thought! Bitch, you thought! Bitch, you thought! Bitch, you thought! Bitch, you thought!
Tsukasa has a really strong ideology that he believes that all the adults from the old world, essentially before everyone was turned to stone, will end up re-corrupting the world with how they feel with money, property, territories, maybe even cause actual world wars again, etc. Especially since the world is essentially fresh and new with all the new lush greenery and all the nice animals running around. Earth got a fresh start. Tsukasa's not above killing the adults still in stone form, just so there's less people to revive and to lessen whatever impact that could happen if they ended up reviving an adult. And Senku does not want this. Senku is a somewhat selfish character in a sense, who does want to do the right thing and he's a good person, but for purely selfish reasons. Senku doesn't want Tsukasa to kill these people because Senku, he just wants to bring people back. He wants to bring everyone back to the modern age. He wants to get technology back up. He wants to follow his dream of going to space. And that's one of Senku's primary motivations. Dr. Stone has a great number of characters in this show, and Tsukasa and Senku with their differing ideologies and way of thinking is one of the things that you'll enjoy about this series. Now, we only get to see Tsukasa and Senku's interactions in the first 5 episodes, but it is really great. Both essentially trying to one-up each other. Not in the way that you would think. Hell, there's even a point where Senku ends up trying to fake that he ended up running away after they revived their friend, Yuzuriha, so they can try and make gunpowder so they can defend themselves against Tsukasa in the event that he would want to take them out. And sure enough, it kind of ends up happening, to the point where Tsukasa even believes that he kills Senku. Now, the one thing I do need to say is how Senku manages to fake his own death was kind of genius, and that is something I really love about this guy's character. He is a walking encyclopedia of science. He thinks 12 steps ahead of everyone else whenever he has to, and he does whatever he can to benefit himself, people he cares about obviously, and to further his goal. Like I said, bringing everyone back to the modern age. And that's essentially the story. Senku ends up finding a village of people that ended up to somehow survive the petrification wave, and we then find out the truth about how they ended up becoming the civilization in the first place and how they were somehow able to survive this long and how long they were around. I won't get too into spoilers. There are so many great characters in this show that I just need to name a few of them. Kohaku, Chrome, Kinro, Genro, and Suika are all really great characters. Hell, one of the characters that I really love is Kisaki, who is literally a buff old man who literally gets excited every time he comes across a challenge to create something. And Senku honestly discovering the village that had managed to survive the stone world was nothing but a stroke of luck. In fact, it's Kohaku, by the way, who is best girl, who ends up finding him after he fakes his death and asks him if he could help cure her sister's disease after seeing what he did to get away from Tsukasa. He agrees because One, he actually wants to see how people have managed to survive or break free of the petrification. And two, he figures if there's a village of these people, maybe he can get them to help him, and then he can further along his goal to rebuild society. And the rest of the season is essentially him trying to making new friends and gaining the people's trust, such as Chrome, who thinks he's a sorcerer, and in reality just a guy who likes collecting rocks and making experiments. He's essentially like a Stone Age version of a scientist who ends up becoming essentially an apprentice to Senku until he eventually ends up doing things himself to a minor extent, and even coming up with ideas that Senku has yet to come up with, well, things that Senku knows but has yet to think of yet, which is a great way to improve his character. We got Kinro, who is honestly the older brother of a pair of brothers, who is essentially a guard of the village and is very stern and wants to basically preserve all the rules. He's literally a stick in the mud. And his younger brother Ginro is the literal opposite. He's lazy, he's cowardly, he'll do almost anything just so he can keep himself alive. And these are just the main cast. The other characters in the village, while they are somewhat named, are honestly really great, and I do enjoy seeing the interactions between these characters and how they end up reacting to Senku's portrayal of science and every new invention he ends up creating. And even when another character who is someone that got revived, Gen, who is a literal illusionist, a modern day magician, ends up becoming part of the main group and helps out whenever he can. In fact, the main appeal of this series, aside from its stories and its characters obviously, is Senku's inventions. And from what I can tell, within the course of almost 2 years, Senku's managed to, well, with help obviously, managed to create a revival fluid that was able to break people out of the petrification. He was able to create an antibiotic, create a motion generator, reintroduced electricity. He literally founded and created gunpowder, though he hasn't used it much lately. He helped with the creation of katanas, helped Chrome realize that he could create a hydro generator, which ended up causing for them to have a clean source of electricity for energy, furnaces, and hell, even a freaking phone. And it's not just the inventions that he makes, but it's how he goes about making them. Throughout the series, every time Senku sets him in the group to go towards, he creates a type of roadmap where it lists a bunch of items and materials that they'll need to get or create in order to lead to the inevitable creation of what they need. And honestly, this is somewhat entertaining because the way Dr. Stone does these things is rooted in real science. Hell, at sometimes at the beginning and end of each episode, there's literally a disclaimer saying that everything that is done here is real and can be done in real life, and says do not do many of these things. The fact that the show is based off of real world science really helps. Not to mention the fact that in this prehistoric world, having a guy like Senku who knows basically everything about science is essentially a good way to not only jumpstart 2 million years of human history and get back to the modern age within a couple of years, hopefully, but also turn science into a type of power system that just anybody can use. Hell, near the end of season 1, he literally got Kaseki to literally create katanas as a better way of fighting for when they inevitably have to fight Tsukasa and his own kingdom in a sense. The way Dr. Stone has its way of getting these objects is amazing because it not only shows how much effort goes into making our daily technology and anything that led up to the creation of our modern technology like phones, televisions, and even cars, but also that if you had to end up having all that knowledge in a prehistoric setting, it would be insanely dangerous with the fact that there are actually a lot of animals running around and the fact that there are places with toxic fumes where that could kill you in an instant. And while Dr. Stone, yes, it is a shonen series, so it's going to have actual battles, and the battles are nothing to scoff at, there aren't too many of those because the main focus of the show is the science. When I was a kid, I loved science. Like, I really loved science to the point where I would use like basic table condiments just to try and make some weird chemical or whatever. Science is the main appeal of the series, and that's what I really like about it, because while it seems impossible to like create something like a cell phone or a cell tower or even electricity just after waking up in this stone world, Senku makes it possible because he knows how everything is made, he knows possible workarounds, and he knows what he needs to do. But the main thing is that even Senku is imperfect because even he is prone to screwing up because he is not physically strong, so he can't do any of the heavy lifting. He isn't insanely accurate when it comes to crafting things, which is why he needs the lights of Kaseki to help craft objects, and like Kohaku, Kinro, and Ginro, and at the beginning Taiju for their strength to help lift things and help like carve things if he needs to, because he is physically weaker than everyone else. And that's what helps with the core thing about Senku. He acts like a mad scientist who only cares about himself, but he cares about other people and getting everyone to basically have better lives. Hell, a lot of times he literally does nice things for people as an excuse for them to help him, but a lot of times while they're helping him, he'll do something nice like make a kind of candy machine or furnaces for people to live in the winter as a quote-unquote necessity or something that he just felt like doing because he had the resources for it, even though he actually wanted to do it. That's what makes him such a nice protagonist. Dr. Stone itself, it has good pacing. It doesn't drag on. And allow me to say this, Dr. Stone, when it comes to its science and getting everything around it, the materials, the items, it's visually stunning. Hell, a lot of the creators even actually do some of this real-world science to try and make it as realistic as possible when they animate it, which is honestly really amazing, because like shows like Demon Slayer, its animation is practically flawless. Not to mention that Season 2 has just been announced, I just figured I'd say that. Not only that, I do have to say, one of the things that I really liked about its animation is one of the main reasons why people like Food Wars with its animation. It's that it's insanely detailed. Food Wars is a series about cooks, and the thing that's the main appeal is the cooking battles because they make the Food Wars so action-packed, dynamic, and really detailed that it's almost like an actual shonen battle. Dr. Stone makes every quest that they're going on to acquire specific minerals and items like a type of fight for your lives, because you are in a somewhat prehistoric world that anything can practically kill you if you're not careful, and that's what I really like. Plus, whenever it comes to like minerals or even trying to do some of the delicate things like making wires or making glass, it's so intricate and they catch it perfectly in its animation, and that's what I really like, because I like seeing how they don't get everything on the first try. Senku literally explains to himself that everything's just a bunch of trial and error. Nothing is essentially one-off. You can't just expect to know how it's made and just make it right away. And that's what I like about this show, because it does show them screwing up at times or not getting everything right at the very start. Dr. Stone has its own ups and downs, but I feel like it's got a bunch of great things going for it. Another thing I really like about the series is not just it's that it has really good comedy. It's got some of the best visual comedic expressions since One Piece. And yes, I know I mentioned One Piece in a bunch of other review videos, but I will mention One Piece as many times as possible. It's one of my favorite series of all time, and it's what got me into manga and anime in the first place, so deal with it. But yeah, the comedy is spot on. While it's not something amazing, it's done in a really good way where every episode will give you a laugh, or it'll help cut down some of the overlying tension. Hell, the communication between some of the characters are honestly kind of hilarious. Like Kinro and Genro, whenever Genro tries to get out of work, Kinro always drags him along, saying that rules are rules. Or whenever Chrome ends up insulting Kohaku, Kohaku has this weird outburst, leaving Chrome to try and apologize, which is honestly, it cracks me up every single time. Hell, even Gen, whenever he hears Senku say he's going to make this or do that, he's like, this is literally impossible. Or by the end of the season, like, I should probably have expected him to say something like this. I really do appreciate it, because not only is there a good sense of continuity with the characters and the story, but it's honestly some believable interactions and chemistry between each of the characters. But last but not least, I do want to say that this series, above all else, has heart. Despite all of the mad scientist cacklings, the comedy, the whatever action is shown, and the actual scientific roadmaps and the way of them trying to get what they need to get, the show's got heart, because every single one of the characters is a believable human being. Whenever you get to a somewhat emotional moment in the show, especially once you get to the end of season 1, it really drives you home, because you believe that these are actual people, and you believe that this is how they would actually feel in these specific situations, or when they see these specific things. That's what makes Dr. Stone one of the best anime of this year. It's got great animation, it's got great characters, it's got a great story. Hell, it's got a good heart and comedy. The heart is honestly one of the best things about this series, and I love it. If you couldn't get by this, I honestly think Dr. Stone deserves the fan base it has right now and the praise. And honestly, I might end up picking up the manga at this point. Season 2 is coming out next year, and it's going to be focusing on the Stone Wars, and I cannot wait. But overall, what do I rate Season 1 of Dr. Stone? I'd give it the same rate that I gave Demon Slayer, a 9 out of 10, because while it did have a lot of great things going for it, and I honestly would give it a 10 out of 10, it wasn't perfect because I did feel like some parts did somewhat drag a bit, or I feel like we could have spent less time on certain side characters that didn't contribute much to the plot or the character development. But yeah, a lot of things the series has going for it is really great, and I can't wait for Season 2, and I highly recommend you guys watch this series. But anyway, I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you guys like and subscribe, and if you have any other series that you want me to review, please leave it down in the comments, and don't forget to follow me on Twitter and Instagram for when I update on new videos. Thank you, and have a good day.
Now, Frank hated this painting, he made me take it down. I do not like this painting, Charlie. Smug aura mocks me. It's evil, Charlie.
Yes.